Well, it's August of 1968 when the Beatles released Hey Jude Revolution. Is it a Beatles drug song? What about political revolution? What yet is to come? Join us. Well, hey there guys, thanks for joining us here at Rock Hard Riffs. This is the guitar channel for the self-taught and other cool rock and roll stuff like this cool rock and roll Beatles stuff. Now we're talking about the release of Hey Jude Revolution. The single record, the 45, has two A-sides. It's not an A and a B-side, it's two A-sides, one being Hey Jude and the other being the song Revolution. Let's talk about the song itself and all the groundbreaking it has to do, and then we'll talk about a couple very personal stories of mine about this as well. So let's start off with the album. Now this album right here was released in 1970, and it's very peculiar. We're going to read about it. This little book came in the U.S. releases of the Beatles albums, and one of them is this album, Hey Jude. So now I'd like to very briefly, if I could, read to you from the book that came with the U.S. albums. This is extremely interesting. All Beatle freaks are going to love this. And this tells all about the album and that time that Hey Jude was released. The whole era-inspired era represented by the collection of Sgt. Pepper and on turned out to be a warm-up for even greater triumphs to come. Which brings us to our final disc, the unusual album released in America in the winter between Abbey Road and Let It Be, and initially titled The Beatles Again, as evidenced by the labels on the first pressings of the album, before finally being christened Hey Jude. This compilation of Beatles singles that have never been on Capitol LPs, from 1964's Can't Buy Me Love, to the recent 1969 Don't Let Me Down, Old Brown Shoe, and the Ballad of John and Yoko, appeared in American record shops while fans were waiting for the delayed release of Let It Be, which was initially said to be coming 1 month after Abbey Road. So all those were released as singles, guys. They weren't on an album. It was a new Beatles album with a new photo of the band on the cover, so American fans scooped it up and ran home, only to be confused that it was all old songs. What was going on? Here's what. In 1969, the Beatles' new business manager, Alan Klein, set out to renegotiate the terms of their deal with EMI. The second contract was nearing its end. Klein offered to extend the group's association with EMI until 1975 and promised a steady flow of Beatle albums as well as solo projects such as John's 1969 live piece in Toronto, on which the Beatles would be paid higher royalties than they earned on the group's recordings. Part of the deal was that Apple, the Beatles company, would deliver 3 new Beatles LPs in the year: Abbey Road, Let It Be, and a new compilation, ergo Hey Jude. Interesting stuff, eh, Beatle friends? The new obligation invitation enticement for Paul, John, George, and Ringo to deliver solo records only made it easier for each of the 4 Beatles to take the next step toward going out on his own. In April of 1970, with Hey Jude and Abbey Road both high on the American charts, Paul released McCartney and announced he was going solo. Let It Be finally came out 3 weeks later as a coda. So there you have it. That is the story behind the Hey Jude album. Now let's talk about Hey Jude, the song itself. Hey Jude, the song itself. What is it about? Paul McCartney swears he was driving over to visit Julian Lennon, John's son, after he had broken up with Cynthia. They were getting in the process of starting to get a divorce and all that stuff, and he wanted to come over and console Julian Lennon. And the song was originally called Hey Jules, which was Paul's nickname for Julian Lennon. And he changed it because, like so much of the Beatle music, they wanted to be obscure. So they changed it to Hey Jude, and then all this other stuff comes up to where nobody really knows what it's about. John Lennon himself even said he thought it was about him. But no, Paul wrote it about Julian Lennon. Now, or to Julian Lennon, actually. Take a sad song and make it better. Now, it's also been insinuated that it is a drug song. So let it out and let it in. That is said to be about heroin or the use of a needle. Let it out, let it in. That's like one of those things from Stairway to Heaven. Play it backwards, stand on your head, and drink warm milk, and then you'll get it. So that's basically the story behind the song Hey Jude. Now, it also is the Beatles' top-selling song at over 7 minutes. Now, that, again, is just hugely groundbreaking. Now, take also the song Revolution. Just an all-out political song without naming names except for Chairman Mao. And you ain't going to make it with anyone anyhow. So that is the story behind that 45. Again, it was released in August of 1968, and I have a couple personal stories for you coming up. You know, it's kind of funny how we're talking about how, we all tend to read things into Beatles songs and, like the initials of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, or is Hey Jude a drug song because of Let It Out, Let It In, or Hey Jules, Hey Jude, what is it about? I mean, the Beatles even wrote a song that is so obscure, they weren't even sure what it was about. Only the Beatles. Anyway, a couple personal stories for you regarding the song, the original release, the 45. It was in the fall of 1968 when yours truly personally received the 45 of Hey Jude Revolution. I had just turned 5 years old, and I was given Hey Jude Revolution as a birthday gift. And my journey began there, as far as Beatles and rock and roll music and that kind of thing from there on. Now, I want to say something to you that's kind of, I hope it's not misunderstood, but I want to kind of relate to my experience with it, kind of like to what the Buddha said. The Buddha said that, if you're familiar with Buddhism, and I don't want to be sacrilegious or anything like that about what I'm about to say, it's just relative in a certain way. And what the Buddha said was that, I am merely here to point the way, but I cannot walk the path for you, but I can point you in the right direction, pointing at the moon. And to me, that's what the Beatles are. They pointed the way for me at a very, very young age. I was 5 years old. I had already always been into, even at a tender age of 5 years old, I was a huge music lover. And then, of course, I was given Hey Jude Revolution, and it was all over as far as I was concerned, musically. It's hard for me sometimes, the bar is set so high at such a young age that being a Beatle freak, people misunderstand it. It's like, you're just hooked on the Beatles. Well, no, that's not true at all. But the bar is, so since the fall of '68, I have been a Beatle fan. Now, the next following year, I got the LP, A Hard Day's Night, and boy, it's just like, wow, these are the same guys. And I just was on that journey again, that musical journey, from then on. And it's been quite a journey. Now, also another personal story is my son. I was getting a divorce from my first wife. And as any of you know that have gone through that, it's no fun. And my son, Les Beans, who you know on the channel here, was, it was very difficult for him too. And I don't know if it's a random thing or one of those inspired things or one of those universe things that just dropped onto us. We were listening to the song Hey Jude. And I told him what the song meant, and I told him that it was Paul telling John's son Julian, hey, I understand that your parents are going through a tough time, they're getting a divorce, but take a sad song and make it better. And you should have seen my son's face when I told him that, when he was about 5 years old, and the impact I saw that it had on him, had a huge impact on me too. So, generation after generation. That's the beauty of music, and especially the beauty of what the Beatles did, and of course other bands too. How do you say it? What do you say? How do you put it into words? There's no need to. It's all right here. You other Beatle fans, you know what I mean. So, thank you very much for this very special celebration of the 50th anniversary of the release of Hey Jude Revolution in the summer again of 1968. Video on the White Album. That one I have special stories for that one too, so please join us for that. And we thank you for joining us in this video. Thank you again for watching Rock Hard Riffs. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you next video.